Fathers of Reddit. In honor of Father's Day, what was your don't tell your mother about this moment? Female coworker of mine was miserable at work one day. I asked her what was wrong. She told me it was her anniversary, and she knew her husband had forgotten. She had preteen girls at home during summer vacation. I knew her home phone number, pre-cell phone era. I called her home phone and one kid picked up. Explained to the kid who I was and that she needed to call dad at work and remind him it was mom and dad's anniversary, and don't tell mom or dad I called. The next day she was all smiles. Gosh, he did remember, brought home flowers and took her to dinner. Mission accomplished. Not a word was ever said about this, until 6 years later, when she left the company. She gave me a hug at a farewell luncheon, and whispered, "My kids ratted you out. Thank you." One night I was enjoying a small bit of ice cream after my 4-year-old daughter went to bed. She came downstairs and caught me, so I offered her a small bite, but since she was supposed to be in bed, I said don't tell mom. She assured me she wouldn't. My wife wouldn't have cared anyway, but it was a fun little game to play. After she went up to bed and I was down on the couch, she snuck into the master bedroom where mom was resting. She told mom that I had let her have some ice cream, and she was afraid of sugar bugs, so could she please brush her teeth again. My wife just laughed at me the next day. Little shit ratted me out to brush her teeth, something she doesn't like doing anyway. When Elle was 12 or so, I walked into my dad's office to find him counting money. He says don't tell mom and you'll find out what it's for. So I don't say a thing. 2 days later he wakes me up early to run errands with him. We came back with a new, used, but new for us, car. He also said if I don't tell how much he spent on it he'll let me drive it. It was only a couple $100, but we were broke and she would have been mad. My mother tried so hard to find out, but I kept the secret. So anytime we were in an open space like an empty lot he would let me drive it. I felt like the coolest kid in middle school knowing how to drive a car. Again, don't tell your mother, he says. It was our secret thing and I'll cherish those memories forever. When I got my permit at 16 I was so excited to drive it for real. I asked my mother if I can drive her around when she has to go out, but she says absolutely not since I have no experience. Well, I can't argue because I don't want to get dad in trouble. This goes on for a few weeks. I keep asking, she keeps telling me number. This finally happened one day while dad was home and overheard. He comes in the room, gives me a nod and says to my mother she's a better driver than you anyway, tosses me the keys and tells mom everything. I was so stoked and cheering. I can drive. I can drive. Dad says drive it. Number. If you can keep a secret for that long you can keep the car too. 20 years later it's still one of my favorite memories. Edit. Wow, I love you guys. This memory made me so happy while sharing and even happier to see all of your responses. To answer some questions, it was a 95 Geo Tracker. My mom was expecting me to get driving experience taking a driver's ed course I was signed up to attend a few weeks down the line. Mom was not mad. She was surprised is all. We didn't keep it from her because of her expected reaction. I suppose it was just more fun to have a secret between only us. My dad absolutely is an awesome dude. I am so very lucky to have had him and to still have him. The greatest gifts he gave me were not material. It was his time and attention. I have so many amazing memories with him just doing regular stuff. He has the best sense of humor and is a genuinely good human. I strive to be like him as a parent and as a person. One night when I was about 8, after I had gone to bed, my dad was playing a Nintendo game, Legend of Zelda I think. We had both been playing it but we were stuck. He finally found a secret passage, paused the game, and came upstairs to wake me up. He told me he figured out where we were stuck, snuck me downstairs in a blanket. I'm sure my mom knew, and I got to stay up after midnight on a school night, hiding under a blanket, to see where the hidden passage went. It was a silly little incident, but very memorable. Edit. Wow, it's one of those blew up overnight situations. Thank you all for the awards and sharing your own versions of the story. I'm glad this warms so many hearts. Edit 2. Don't read if you don't want the feels ruined. If you asked about my relationship with my dad, we actually weren't that close, and still aren't, because reasons. But this story stands out in my memory not just because it was awesome and wholesome, because it wasn't like him. Edit 3. As to the specifics of the game's secret passage, after some googling, I can't find a Zelda-related secret that matches my memory. I recall a path that is going east then turns south. To the right there's an ocean, and if you just keep going east instead of turning south, there's a hidden path where you can walk over the ocean. We played several similar games with that old top-down view. Could have been Dragon Warrior, 8 Eyes, or so many others. Maybe someone on here can figure it out. Edit 4. Thanks to the hive mind for figuring out it was Zelda 2, when you get the water boots and can walk over the water to get to the ocean palace. It's great to fill in the gaps of a nice childhood memory. My dad and I, around 5 years old, were on our way home from a car show when we were getting followed by the cops. My dad struggled to put on his seatbelt quickly in hopes he wouldn't get a ticket. Unfortunately, we got pulled over. This might have been the first time ever that I saw a cop this close up, let alone speak to one. I was a deer in headlights the whole time. Well, with a cop on either side of the car, the officer leaned in and asked my dad why he was swerving. That dick told the cops I was tickling him. The cops looked at me straight in the eyes and asked if this was true. I was too scared to say anything and just nodded yes. The officers smiled and said, "Never to do that again while your father is driving." Okay, they left without any further words and my dad gave me the lecture of don't tell your mom. My uncle also had an unpleasant story regarding his passport. He went on a skiing trip to Czechoslovakia back in 1987. He had his passport with him when he entered the country coming from Austria. He had a Yugoslav passport, so he could enter Czechoslovakia and other communist countries without a visa. He was in college and the weather was just so great for skiing that he stayed there for another week. When he packed his stuff, he took his passport out. He was traveling by bus, and he was looking through it. He then saw something that almost made him shit his pants. His passport expired 3 days ago. Back then, it was very, very unpleasant if a communist border guard caught you without a valid passport. He was in the bus and he was getting nervous the closer they got to the border. At the border, which was more like a military checkpoint, they collected all passports and took them into an office where also border officials were going through each one of the passports, checking if everything is alright. After about 20 to 30 minutes later, which felt like an hour to him, a border official went back inside the bus and gave the bus driver our passports. My uncle could hear them talk. Bus driver, are all his passports okay? Border guard, yes, except for one. Border guard stands right in the middle, holding a red passport, opening it up and saying my uncle's last name and that he should come with him. My uncle stood up and thought that he was going to a prison for the next few weeks. The border guard showed him the last page of his passport and asked him, "Why didn't you sign your passport?" My uncle needed a moment to realize that this guy was not saying you are arrested for trying to illegally cross the border. My uncle then apologized and signed his passport and told the border guard that he will not let that happen again. Dad and I used to rent a movie each week for when Mum had dinner with friends, usually things like Star Trek or action films. One day, I was about 11, he came home with Blade. We got about 10 minutes in and he turns to me and said, "Don't tell your mother about this, let's just say I forgot to get it this week." Of course I agree. Fast forward 7-ish years, Dad blithely drops at the dinner table the fact that we watched Blade when I was about 11. Silly Dad thought there was some kind of statute of limitations on this. When my 3-year-old wakes up in the middle of the night, like maybe 3 times a month, instead of putting her back to sleep, okay, her stay up and partake in whatever it is I am doing no matter what. Sometimes she falls asleep in minutes and so many times she stays up for a couple hours. I think it's amazing times. I think it may even be dreamlike for her by the way she speaks and moves. She has painted with me, heard my books read aloud, watched Lord of the Rings and cooked creme brulee. The rule is, it's my time, so if she's gonna be with me she does what I'm doing, just like I do for her all day long. She totally gets it and never makes it about her. My goodness, thank you everybody for your comments and your awards. What a special day to be recognized as a father. Not exactly because we were caught in the act, but here we go. When I was 10 years old I was in a head-on car crash with my dad and my little brother. My dad ended up with 2 shattered feet and he was in a wheelchair after getting out of hospital. Now my dad did stereotypical dad things around the house before this happened, and being stuck in a wheelchair was difficult for him. One day while my mum was out, it was just the 2 of us in the house. Suddenly I'm being called by my dad to go grab the lawnmower and the trimmer. My dad had decided to cut the grass while in his wheelchair. So 10-year-old me does as she's told and grabs what needs to be grabbed and plus everything in as told. I move what needs to be moved into the garden, but there's one problem. Dad can't get into the garden in his chair. The entrance is just too narrow. So my father, being the reckless and mischievous man that he is, comes up with a plan. He's going to lift himself up using the garden wall. I'm to collapse the chair and move it through and then reopen it so he can sit down. The pressure is on. Little 10-year-old me is ready to go. He gets himself up and we manage it in one try. After that, cutting the grass together was fairly simple, but by this point we'd attracted the attention of the neighbors. My neighbor from across the road was frantic when she saw what we were doing. Husbands from other households were joking my dad was making them look bad. Then, the jig was up. Mum was home. I didn't get into trouble exactly, but Mum never let us live down. When my son was 6 I was playing Grand Theft Auto late at night. He wakes up and comes to the living room, tells me he can't sleep, and asks can he watch me play. I say he can, but not to tell his mom. He agrees with a big smile. Maybe after about an hour he is playing and I'm watching and helping him. He can't stop laughing, driving into people and running from the cops. I was telling him to watch out for the 5-0 and he asks me what that means, so I tell him it's the cops. He just shrugs and keeps playing. Now fast forward about a week later and we are all driving in the car. All I hear is a scream of "Dad, watch out, it's the 5-0" and I absolutely start crying from laughing so hard, all while his mother's questioning where he learned that. He just says YouTube. She found out later that I let him play GTA, but I hope the memory of that is as special to him as it is to me. When I was in middle school I was the only one willing to go shopping groceries with my dad. He didn't want to go alone and my mom was at school studying her masters. None of my siblings wanted to go with him. We used to go to Carl's Jr., have a big breakfast, and then we went grocery shopping. Nobody knew, not even my mom, until years later. He would also let me buy any cereal I wanted. That's actually how I learned how to buy good fruit and veggies, how to order meat and fish, etc. When my siblings found out they were angry. They would have gone if a big breakfast was on the menu. My mom just laughed. Nowadays they sneak to have breakfast together before going grocery shopping since we're all grown up. I'll speak for my dad here. He had just gotten a really shitty motorcycle while we were visiting his parents at their farm in a semi-desert area. Note, he's never ridden a motorcycle before and his youngest brother died in a motorcycle accident. I remember coming outside in the late afternoon and I saw my dad absolutely covered in scrapes, cuts, and bruises all over his body, but mostly on his legs that had been bare. I freaked out and he assured me he was fine and explained that he had fallen down a mountain nearby while on this motorcycle. I don't remember if the bike was salvageable, but I do remember him turning to me, putting on a very serious face, and saying, "Absolutely do not tell your grandmother about this." Even at like 50, he was that scared of his mother. Bonus story, I was at the beach with my dad since I was staying with him for the weekend. Divorced parents. We went swimming in the ocean near this rock formation that jutted out of the sea no more than 100 meters of the shoreline. We went in when it was high tide turning into low tide and we got swept out by a riptide that formed around the rock. My dad told me he was too tired and old to swim out and was just going to let the current take him and hope it would spit him out. I, a young, strong swimmer, started swimming parallel to the shore for a good 15-20 minutes straight. According to my dad, felt like hours to me. I got out and started screaming for help and saying that my dad was still stuck in the ocean. No one could see him and I was so scared he had drowned. Then someone said, "Is that him over there?" and pointed about 200 meters down the beach. Sure enough, there was my dad walking towards us in his Lumo green swim trunks. I ran to him and we met in the middle and fistly hugged because we had both thought we had lost the other forever. As we were packing up to leave shortly after, I looked at him and asked, "I don't have to tell Mom about this, do I?" And he snorted in "oh dear God no" manner and said, "Please do not tell your mother about this. Considering I've almost drowned 3 times under and broke my collarbone under my father's care, I can understand his desire to keep this under wraps too." Dad was putting new roof shingles on. I was probably 3, maybe 4. I asked if I could help. He said if I could climb the ladder. Sure. I was always climbing so that was no issue. Climbed right on up and started handing him shingles. It would have been a "don't tell your mother" moment had she not come home from grocery shopping. After several back and forth of "where you end up here Mom," she figured it out and flipped out. "What is he doing on the roof?" Daughter speaking for her father. In high school, everybody was always busy at work or clubs, so I was the first one in my household to get home nearly every single day. Dad was having money troubles that he didn't want to disclose to anyone, so he paid me $5 a month to take the bank statement letter from the mailbox and hide it from my stepmom until he got home. It was the closest thing I got to an allowance. P.S. I had no idea what the money trouble was. BTW. I was always the don't ask, don't tell person, so that's why he trusted me the most about this. It was my weekend with my 15-year-old son. We had divorced when he was 10. We were at a pool party BBQ at my friend's condo complex and I had brought a couple sodas for him. The dude cooking the chicken overcooked it and was dry, and another friend had pilfered one of the Dr. Peppers, so my son needed something to drink. I suggested he go back to the condo and find something in the fridge. Then he pointed at the plastic pitcher with about a glass left of margarita. I said, "Okay, but don't tell your mom." I figured he would just take a mouthful to wash down the food, but nope, he pounded the whole thing. I was like, okay, well there wasn't that much in there so no biggie. I said, "Dude, didn't think you were gonna chug the whole thing." He was like, "What? Is there alcohol in it?" I was like, "Yeah duh, it's a margarita." He said, "But you guys used to make us kids margaritas when you had people over the house." I said, "Yeah, virgin ones with just ice and the mixer in the blender, not the adult version with tequila in it." Well, next thing you know he's super chatty, actually talking to all my friends like a normal outgoing person instead of his usual teenage introverted small talk. Problem was it was Sunday and I had to take him back to his mom's that evening. I was planning on getting bitched out about it, or she would find it hilarious. Honestly, it could have gone either way with her. I could never predict how she would take it. Luckily she was out when we got there and I told him to just go to his room and take a nap. He already fell asleep in the car on the way there. She was none the wiser. I think sometime later he eventually told her about it and she did find it funny after all.